How's it going? This is awesome. Everybody from everywhere. Who thinks they traveled the furthest here? Show of hands. Everybody's from San Francisco. Maine? That's awesome. Great lobster place. How about you?
Italy.
Italy. Awesome. Great culinary collabs.
New York.
New York. Yes. That's where I'm also from. So anyway, my name is Kent Morita. I'm a conversation designer at Google working on Gemini. I love having conversations, as you just witnessed, and I designed them for a company to make robots sound really, really awesome. Now, there is a feeling in the air, and it's tied to AI. It's excitement, dare I say hype, but also unease. It is a tumultuous time. The dominant feeling Americans are feeling towards AI right now is caution, followed by concern. Most people are alarmed, and for good reason. According to the Harvard Business Review, 31% of all job functions can be done with AI tools, perhaps better than humans. What does that mean for the job market? What does that mean for all of us? Honestly, it's exciting, but it's also honestly terrifying. And candidly speaking, my role at Google looks completely different now than it did 1 year ago. And it's because of AI. But I am not too worried. And it's because I love my grandma. Thank you. That's all the time I have. No. Anyway, I'm kidding about that, but I'm very serious about this point. And this will all make sense by the end of this presentation. So, to recap, we are in a tumultuous time, chaotic. But this isn't the first time technology has disrupted the world and made people feel this way. We can glean some knowledge from the past. So first, I like to show how we got to where we are now. Then I like to show some examples of how people navigated with success different periods of times of excitement and unease. And to wrap it up, I want to make a point that for me personally, loving my grandma is exactly how I feel okay. So, before the 1970s, computers were huge machines. Check this out. This is in 1956. That on a forklift is an IBM hard drive, weighing over 1 ton, and the capacity, 5 megabytes. So, 2 Olivia Rodrigo songs or half a swipe on TikTok. Right there. So people who worked on these computers, they wore white lab coats. They were commonly known as the computer priesthood. The takeaway I like for you to have from this is that the ability to use computers was compared to a priesthood, a hallowed craft. These select few people who knew how to speak this holy language of the machine, the binary, were the only ones who were able to tap into this resource, the power of the computer. It was like being an astronaut. Only a select few were allowed to experience this next frontier. People used punch cards to get information in and out of these computers. It wasn't really until the 1970s with the introductions of the likes of the Altair, Commodore, and the Tandy where the computers became more affordable. And this started with computer kits. Passionate hobbyists and engineers built the computers at home. And this is the beginning of the first revolution that disrupted everything, the personal computer revolution. The fact that one person can decide when and how to use a computer was a revolution. Until then, computers were a shared resource. You had to schedule your time with computers. Now people could sit at home and build their own programs, experiment, fail, succeed on their own, make computers do what they want when they want. A few years later, Park Labs pioneered, Apple and Microsoft made popular the graphical user interface. And this was another revolution. No longer did you need to know how to code to manipulate files all the time. This is huge. And using a desktop metaphor and a mouse, it's an interface that's still dominating personal computing today. It's elegant. It's a beautiful metaphor. Then came the internet revolution. The internet is a series of tubes. Information from around the world at your fingertips. Information exchange exploded. No longer did you need to physically go to a hangout or homebrew computer club to share and innovate each other's ideas. Information became almost free to exchange. Then came the cloud revolution. We can now tap into huge computing resources without having to own the huge computing resources yourselves. Services provided by the likes of Google Cloud, AWS and Azure, allows people to access and tap into computing resources, but in piecemeal fashion. Yeah, so Google Cloud is bigger on the screen because they pay for my insurance. But very seriously, we are working on some really cool stuff. Some of my colleagues are in the audience. If you would like to talk to them about it, they'll be happy to tell you what's going on. Now, then came the mobile revolution. No longer were applications limited to the computer at the home. Everybody has in their pocket a camera, a computer, a host of applications, streaming, creating all the time. So those are all disruptive moments. All these revolutions needed to happen for the current AI revolution, which is exciting, but again, a little scary. Without huge compute resources, there will be no large language models. The existence of personal computers allowed an entire generation of people to experiment with lower stakes, familiarize themselves with computing, build products, technologies. And so now we're here now. What does that mean? What products will be successful? What kind of jobs will survive? I will not be the first to say this, but we don't know. But through all of these revolutions I just talked about, there were success stories of those who weathered their respective storms and found some success. So Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So I'm hoping we can rhyme today. Let's make sure that we're on the rhyming side of history, and perhaps you will add one more line to the poem that is the history of technology. So the first thing I want to get to is loving your community. At the end of the day, we are a community. To build a successful product is always about making something that a community, users, likes. And this might be people you hang out with. This might be the people you like. When thinking of a success story that took full advantage of a community, Vector Graphic comes to mind. Back in 1970, Laura Harp's husband bought an Altair 8800. He was an engineer that didn't like his homebrew computer was limited to 4K of RAM, so he built this RAM upgrade to 8K. Laura Harp decided that with her friend Carol Fly, that building these RAM upgrade kits and selling them to other hobbyists might be a fun thing to do. So they took a trip to the Southern California Computer Society's monthly show, and what they saw was a really amateur operation. Quote, poorly composed handwritten instructions accompanied with shoddily packaged chips in like plastic bags were being traded for what is around $5,000 today to each other at these like clubs. So what these two women brought to the table was exceptional professionalism. Color-coded, easy-to-understand chips accompanied with well-written instructions, well-presented packaging, and they delivered a memory upgrade that everybody wanted. And sure, you could get 8K RAM upgrades from others, but Vector came to be known as the brand of choice, and they took extreme care. They loved their community. They even recognized that distributors were a huge part of the community and talked to them, make sure that they were like getting the products in the way that they wanted. They were obsessed with the community, and they were able to put every ounce of their effort into what the community wanted. And by 1982, they were a publicly traded company worth $36 million in those days dollars. Another story I like to share is a story about Innovate. It's a trail running shoe company. So after 20 years of being in the shoe business, the founder, Wayne Eddy, decided he's going to create a shoe company of his own. And he wanted to focus on a very niche community, trail running. So he obsessively focused on this community, went to their track meets, talked to the professionals, and the community responded with so much enthusiasm. These top elite runners started to wear his experimental shoes over the name brands. And if you go to Reddit right now, go to r/trail running, this is the brand that people like. What these two stories have in common are two things: a passionate community and the founder being super curious about them. So if you're part of a community, even if the community is really small, I recommend not thinking about scale when you start building things. I recommend building something for your community. They could be your roommates, your family, your kids' marching band, your Girl Scout troop. It could be anything. Build something for somebody you care about. And the advantage of this is that you can get feedback really fast. And the worst that could happen is that your community will feel seen and appreciated, as long as you don't treat the community as an opportunity to exploit, but a group of people that you truly want to help. One of my favorite communities is my family, and one of my favorite members is my grandma. So as part of the Google Assistant team, we were in charge of coming up with use cases for the Google Assistant. And when I visited my grandma, she told me that she misses being able to walk around and just say hi to people. She used to live in a city, but now lives in a rural community. It's much more affordable there. So I proposed a feature on the Google Assistant called Hello Every Day. So every day when you say hello to the Google Assistant in Japan, the Google Assistant will respond in a different way. And it became one of the best traffic use cases in Japan. All because my grandma told me she wanted to say hi to someone every day. UX research is really important, but sometimes there are some communities and community members that you know personally today that that could tell you what product or features to build because you love them and you know them. So if you're confused, I would say build for someone you know and love. In worst case, your grandma gets really, really excited. So the second point I want to make is to solve for today's problems. So there's an old Instagram logo there. When Instagram first started, it was on a vacation to Mexico. The founder, Kevin Systrom, noticed that his girlfriend wasn't willing to post the photos she took on her iPhone 4 because they just didn't look that great. So he created this photo filter app that covered up the lack of quality on the phones at the time. And later, when the team added features such as photo sharing and then got acquired by Facebook, you know the rest, you know the history. But what's interesting to me is that if the iPhone 4 came with a really, really beautiful, great camera to begin with, the initial inspiration might not have happened. And what's also interesting to me is that I think many could have predicted that the cameras in iPhones will get better and better in the future. The iPhone 4 had a better camera already than the iPhone 3, so it stands to reason that the next one would be better than the 4. You can say this photo filter idea isn't worth pursuing because it's a problem that will solve itself because Apple's going to innovate for you, which can be true, but I think that's similar to ignoring user needs of today. Your girlfriend is not willing to share photos about the Mexico trip today. Are you going to tell her just to wait for the next iPhone? I might consider getting a next boyfriend. In all seriousness, discounting ideas in this way is ignoring real user needs that are asking for help in front of you right now. My grandma is 92 years old, and many of our users are similar. There's a trend in tech to always focus so much on the global youth, glow-yo. It makes business sense, right? Like, let's get them before other companies do, and then later when they have discretionary income, they'll pay us. But on the other hand, I think the global youth will build for themselves too. So I would say let's maybe build for people today. And I appreciate that you could do something today to help people now. Again, the worst thing that can happen is that your grandma gives you harsh feedback, which is way better than hoping for good feedback in 20 years, in my opinion. And looking to the past is great too. And looking for innovation that worked in the past but stopped being successful for a while is a really, really cool angle to look at history. This toy is called the Radio Rex. It's actually the first ever voice-activated toy. When you say Rex, that way that particular phrase sounds, it vibrates this copper plate on the side, and it disrupts an electrical circuit and releases a really strong spring that allows this dog to pop out. And this was hugely successful back in the 1920s, which I think gives us reason to believe that something similar will be as fun, delightful, and successful today. And turns out Furbies are very, very popular right now too. So the user's desire to see an object react to their voice hasn't changed. And we should respect and honor that. Going back to my grandma, in the 1960s in Japan, there was this TV show called Geba Geba Kyujuppu, which was my grandma's favorite show to watch with my father. The show title literally translates to Geba Geba 90 minutes. And it was a show that had over 150 short sketches within 90 minutes. And this was based on one insight by the producer. Quote, adults leave to use the restroom when they're watching commercials. Kids actually stay to watch the commercials. Why don't we make a show in the style of commercials all the way through? This was based on the US show Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, and this show was an instant success. But due to high costs of creating so many sketches, both in terms of money and physical exhaustion, this show, super popular as it was canceled within 6 months. But it was very, very successful. And my parents still talk about it to this day. So what if you could provide users with short 1-minute content, but you can offset labor costs by making it user-generated? You get TikTok. When TikTok came out, I couldn't immediately understand that appeal. But if I had listened to my grandma a little closer, explain the concept of TikTok, I think she would have just told me, oh, that's Geba Geba 90 minutes, but everybody on the actors are just people all around us. That sounds really great. So listen to your grandma. You might just create TikTok. So now I like to talk about conversation design. That's what I do. To help explain this, I like to quickly go over history again. So since the mainframe that required special access and knowledge to tap into the power of computing, technology has evolved. In one way, it has evolved to become more human, right? So that in the early days, humans carried almost all of the burden of learning how to communicate with the machine. And with the advent of new technologies, that burden has shrunk. And what I mean is, for instance, look at the graphical user interface. It uses a desktop metaphor to make it much more intuitive to the user on how to manipulate files. But crucially, it still uses conventions. Somebody in the Bay Area decided that left click means to select, right click means to find detail. You still need to learn these conventions. And the multi-touch interface, very, very intuitive, but still pinch to zoom, all these things, double finger swipe, these are conventions that you're still needing to learn. Conversation design is where I like to propose represents a new discipline in a time where this relationship with computers is starting to flip. With conversation design, we're leveraging natural language processing and our understanding of linguistics to make sure that the computers actually learn how to speak like us. And this is a huge paradigm shift. And this is made possible with great advances in technology. But to figure out how to make a machine speak and think human, we circle back around to realize that we must look to ourselves and understand how we work, play, talk, fall in love, fall out of love, fight, make amends, what have you, to really understand how to create an interface that speaks like us, not the other way around. So my grandma is one of the most hilarious people I know. She's amazing. But we tried to get her on the computer, but she tried and failed to use the desktop interface. She uses the multi-touch interface with her phone with some success, but my view is that by having computers speak human and not the other way around, we can create interaction paradigms that are age agnostic and more accessible. By now, you might understand why I think designing for my grandma, for me, is a fruitful endeavor. And a reason why I think and this is the reason why I feel good about being a conversation designer, because our North Star goal as conversation designers is to create human-centered technology that allows more and more people to use technology. And I think that is a goal that is, throughout all this tumultuous time of AI and everything, is still a fairly evergreen goal to have. So, and truthfully, every time I feel a little confused or anxious about where technology will go, what will happen next, I do ask myself, will this excite my grandma? It's an extremely helpful rule of thumb for me, and it gives me a lot of calm. But to make my point agnostic to you all, here are four things that I think history tells us to do in a tumultuous but exciting time like now. First is to love and be useful to a community. Second, solve today's real problems. Third, revisit old successes. And four, build for someone you love. And I'd humbly propose that you keep these ideas in your mind while you build things in this chaotic but super exciting time. I would say forget about scale a little bit. Exit plans, seed funding, all of that for now. Those are useful concepts for commercialization and activating money as a tool. Those are very useful, but I urge you to build things at the end of the day that you will know will make someone excited. And for me personally, that's my grandma. Thank you. All right. So is there Q&A? Yeah, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Oh, sorry. There's a mic right behind you, but you'll be next.
You said that your role has changed from what it was 1 year ago to what it is now. I was wondering if you could tell us what those changes look like, and are you fulfilled with it? What it was like before versus
Yeah, sure. So in conversation design, things used to be very hard-coded, if you will. Hi, I'm your Galaxy 24 help assistant. I could tell you where the next talker is. How could I help? And then you basically say something that is within the reasonable range of what somebody might respond to that, and then it uses some natural language processing techniques to answer that. But now with LLMs, the robot could feasibly answer anything, right? You could tell it anything, and it might start saying things or promising things that we don't necessarily want to do. So it becomes this different relationship I have with the technology. It used to be much more, a flow chart would be very, very rigid, and we had some techniques and innovations that allowed us to give this flow chart to the legal team, marketing, product team, and say, do you sign off on all these flows? But now we have this engine that is so powerful that it could create so many different branches that we can't even wrap our heads around. So my discipline has been changing to try to accommodate for this very exciting but also hard to control engine. So it's almost like we were driving Model T Fords, and then the electric motor was like just plopped in front of us. So when you put the pedal to the metal, things just start flying off, you know? So we're very cautious about, is this safe? How do we make sure it's safe? This is really exciting technology, but how do we make sure this is provided to the user in a way that's really useful to them? So the relationship has changed, yeah.
Right. Have you seen anyone, either internally or externally, build an experience with Gemini that you're like, Grandma would love this?
Personally, with Gemini, I don't know how much I could speak to that, but I could kind of plug my project. There's a company called InWorld AI that creates this really awesome character platform that allows you to ingest some data to create these awesome characters. And about a year ago, they had an artist grant that allowed anybody to submit ideas. And I submitted my idea, which was to use an LLM to power a digital representation of a Japanese American incarcerated in the camps in 1943. So it uses the LLM to allow the audience to speak to this digital actor playing a character. And this experience was my way to try to fill the emotional gaps of history and to also bring voice to historically marginalized voices, which includes my family. So thankfully, this got a bit of traction. There was a lot of interesting problems because he asked this character that's ostensibly from 1943 about Brexit. It will answer. So we needed to create these new conversation design techniques around it to make sure the user is within the realm of the intended experience. And at the very least, we were able to win an Anthem Award, which is kind of the humanitarian arm of the Webby Awards through this experience. But yeah, there's so much stuff that we could do with LLMs. And yeah, that's one example. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, you mentioned about community.
Yeah.
And with Google, in my experience, like working with them, there's like a lot of like new build and development. Like for example, like Google Wallets, Google Pay, even like Google Cloud's community, like developers, but they hardly in existing. How about like Gemini? Like, do you create like community with it, with this voice, like maybe like kind of like Alexa within the Google Home, like someone that can be like personal assistance kind of voice, or what will you build in the future that can answer to community?
So are you asking about a Gemini feature that helps communities, or are you asking about communities within Google that are formed between developers?
Actually both and more.
Okay.
So like community, like kind of like in developments, but also like community within the users.
Sure.
Like for example, like within YouTube's Shorts, or just like for example, like the Google Pay and Wallet is going to be discontinued. A lot of the features yet again in June, and there's also like Bard that's being changed into Gemini just because of the launch that didn't really according to the expectations.
Yeah.
So do you think that community will actually can be helpful to to answer and help like support this to happen? As you know, like open source is backed by community, so therefore like the success is eminent. So yeah.
I think without community, there's I think community is so important. I think Midjourney being on Discord is super cool. You could see everybody putting their prompts in and inspiring each other to create more. I think that's great. We do have a Discord channel for Gemini as well to allow people to just ask questions and talk to us. There are some parts of that question that I can't directly answer, but there is something. We did some UX research around the world, and in particular, there was this university in Korea that this teacher decided to create a curriculum around using LLMs as part of their literature curriculum. And what was the prompts that they were creating were so advanced, like just the most amazing prompt engineering I've seen, honestly, from users. And it was from a community of couple dozen students that were all just incentivized to help each other. And honestly, they were just so excited. And this class in this university in Korea was honestly creating these prompts that were light years ahead of what we seen from the general population. So I do think with regards to LLMs, community is super important. And to try to tap into specific communities and their needs, I think is going to be a topic that I think that's going to be somewhere that a lot of people are going to find a lot of success. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
But will Google have like this kind of community, or like partnering with like communities, like in answering, or maybe like to get Gemini to be used more by community, like hackathons, or like, you know, like partnering with local communities?
Yeah, so we have a Discord group, and it's really, really fun. There's a lot of cool ideas coming in there from the community, and like I'm always excited. I take like Udemy and Coursera classes just to like figure out what people are coming up with in terms of prompt engineering, and I'm always surprised. I'm like, wow, this person created a kind of an API within Gemini or ChatGPT, and now it does sentiment analysis for all these like customer queries. Like people are creating really, really cool stuff, and we are trying to make sure that we are positioned where communities grow, and one of those places is Discord. So yeah, it's really cool. I highly recommend it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Speaking of community, y'all are awesome community of an audience. Like you have been so kind. Thank you so much for your time.